If you are living your life for the weekends, then you got to change your
Yeah.
life. The idea that you are choosing safety and certainty, even if you're miserable in your job and you resent it every day, you're trading your life for a paycheck. And that makes no sense at all. Here's the thing though, the safety that people thought they had in their job with AI and what's going to happen with, layoffs and the impact
Hmm.
on jobs, that safety is gone
Yeah.
because what's worse is if you lose your job and you don't even have a high agency mindset and you don't believe in yourself, now you're really in trouble because you.
Welcome to Super Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm your host, Shahid Durrani. Today we have with us Nikki Barua, the CEO and co-founder of Flipwork, helping large enterprises reinvent for the AI age. Welcome to our show, Nikki.
Thanks for inviting me, Shahid. I'm thrilled to be
No,
here.
I've been excited to meet with you. Actually, I know you are one of the wonderful guests that actually, keep their word when it comes to collaboration. So I noticed that you connected on
Mhm.
all the social media pages, and I've been watching your content. I've been actually sick for a while, but I know when we connected a few weeks ago, I believe I started looking at your stuff,
Mhm.
and that's great. I'm excited to talk to you about your startup. But if you could kind of
Yeah.
start with sharing what your revenues look like right now, or your income, what stage are you at right now?
Yeah, well, Flipwork is a brand new startup, so this is my fourth business, and we officially launched in January, so we're 2 months old at this point, and it's been kind of a wild story of how we even got launched because we made revenue before we even officially launched the
Hmm.
company. So talk about product market fit, right place, right time. That we had a concept that we were testing out. And shared the idea with enterprise clients, and they said, we want it. We're ready to
Well,
buy.
that's the
And
best
so
way
it
to do
was
it,
kind of
right? Like you want to make sure you
yeah,
test the market, and there's no other better
yeah.
way than actually, getting some clients.
Yeah, so like I was telling my team, we're on our way to $1 billion company. We're just 999 million short, so
Beautiful.
we're almost there.
It's always, yeah, I love that mindset. That's awesome.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you had a successful corporate career before going into
yeah,
entrepreneurs. And before we started recording, you mentioned that your entire family is in entrepreneurship. That's your passion. But what was the moment you
yeah.
realized you were ready to walk away and go all in into uncertainty?
Yeah, I don't think there was one specific
Okay.
moment. I think it was really an inner knowing is probably the
Yeah, I
best way I
like
can
that.
describe it. I grew up in India, and my mom is an entrepreneur and built up her business, from the ground up with no support, no resources, no investor, nothing at all. Like literally just a vision and hustle and grind. And I was 3 years old when she started her business. So I watched her firsthand just what it really takes, the grit and the grind that it really takes to bootstrap and build from the ground up.
Yeah.
It's like I had a front row seat into the inner reality of
Yeah.
entrepreneurship, the ups, the downs, the sacrifices, the late nights, the
Yeah. Yeah.
uncertainty, all of that. But what was attractive to me in watching my mom build her business was just the sheer passion and belief. It was an expression of who she is. And that, I didn't focus on the downsides. Like that didn't scare me off. What excited me was the
Hmm.
upside of just how it's truly a creative expression, and the agency, the autonomy, the freedom to bring your idea to life. That was what just got sealed in my head. And so coming to America as an immigrant and like building my corporate career, deep inside I just knew that eventually I'd find my way into being an entrepreneur. And so it was really just finding the right steps along the way. I'd started some side hustles and tested my way into initial businesses, but then I knew at one point that this is it. I just have to go all in. And so my first business, I started with no clients, no investors, no work at all. It was just I seen it for so many years of what it takes. So I just knew like it'll, you just keep staying focused on your vision and you keep working at it and eventually it's going to work out. And that's exactly how it
Yeah.
worked.
What business was your mom in?
So she started off in education. So she started with building schools, eventually got into real estate and a few other ventures. And but her real drive was about helping women,
Huh.
um, you know, find financial freedom and self belief.
Uh-huh.
Because I'm talking about the 70s and 80s in India, where there wasn't, for so many women, there was
Yeah.
just not a way to have real autonomy. And my mom was determined to help them, feel like they can make a living and be independent. And most of her team was all women, and they went on to become leaders in her organization and even become entrepreneurs
That's
themselves
great.
over time. So it was great to see
So,
that.
Nikki, you know that there's a key word there that got my attention was the self belief. Um, do you
Mm.
recall growing up? Was there any specific mantras or any specific type of advice your mom used to give you that stuck with you till this day?
Actually, it was my
Uh huh.
dad that created a visual that became my source of self belief. My dad created this collage, and it had pictures of all these powerful women leaders from all over the world. It was Margaret
Hmm.
Thatcher and Indira Gandhi and all of
Yeah.
them. And they were like magazine clippings and all their photos.
Yeah.
And he kept sticking all these pictures on the collage, and it was on the inside of my closet door. So, and in the center of that collage, he had sketched out my face and written my name, but he never said a word about it to
Wow.
me. He didn't say, I want you to be like
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
or,
It's just a visual.
like that is the
Yeah.
aspiration. It was just a
Yeah.
visual, right? So every day I would open my
Hmm.
closet and I would look at that picture, and I saw all of these powerful women, but I saw myself amongst them.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
idea,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
was a little girl. So like
That's
the
good.
idea that I
I
belong
like that.
amongst them, but also that the purpose of
Yeah.
leadership is contribution and impact.
Yeah.
So that just got imprinted in my
Mm.
mind. And I think
It was
that's
a
really where I
it
draw
was a
strength from.
subconscious injection while you were growing up. It was a smart move, because it's sometimes it's hard as parents to kind of share with our kids and make them join our belief or join our ideology
Mhm.
around business and success and mindset, because especially when they get into teenage years, it's difficult for them to see the view from others, except for themselves. Kind of, they
Yeah.
have to figure out themselves. It's everybody, right? All human beings. But with this, the imagery, he didn't really have to say much. I was doing a lot of work. Like
Yeah.
for me, with my kids in the morning when they go to school, I asked them, "What do you have inside you?" And they say, "Greatness." And I say, "What can you do?" "I can do anything." So I just every morning, I just ask them that,
Yeah.
or just randomly as well. I'll ask them. But that's, they also have a statement.
I love
Yeah, they
that.
also have a
Yeah.
statement in a picture frame. I did something similar, but mine came with a lot of lecture, as they call it. So, but
Hmm.
I did create a frame and I hung it, but then I explained that statement, what it can do for them subconsciously. They weren't really interested, but I asked them, before you go to
Hmm.
sleep, kind of read it. They do at times, they don't, but at least in the morning when I ask them that statement comes back
Hmm.
into an image in their mind. So definitely I appreciate what your dad did. Another idea
Right.
for anybody out there that wants to create a vision board in the new age of AI, and really see themselves, because it does have an incredible impact.
Hmm.
Idea is, when you go, if you have ChatGPT, you go to images, you get one of the images from there, the prompt, and then you go into a new ChatGPT chat, paste that in there with the image that it created, and say, I would like you to create a prompt for me that I can use ongoing, because I want to create a vision board with me being in different
Hmm.
situations. So Now ChatGPT will bring out a prompt, then you copy that prompt, you just change the wording in each of them. Or you just ask that same chat to create one for, say, you're on vacations, or you have a podcast show, right? Or something that you want to become or do. And if you're comfortable putting yourself on ChatGPT or not, but then it'll create you within those scenes. And it is so super powerful because now it actually looks real. These images look completely real, and you can actually see yourself, and it has a big impact on your subconscious. So anyways, I wanted to share that.
Yeah, I think the idea of if you can see it, you can
Yeah.
be it is incredibly powerful because so often, and this is so true for entrepreneurship, right? If you can't even imagine it, you will not work toward it. It's not magical. The whole concept is simply we apply our effort when we believe that effort
It's
will lead to
self-belief,
the
right?
results we
At the end
desire.
of the day.
Yeah. And if you don't believe that's possible, you're just not going to apply effort towards it. You're not going to stay
You
focused on
talk
it.
yourself
So
out of it.
being able to see the result in advance, that's why the idea of painted picture, of having a painted picture of your business and visualizing all of the things you've already accomplished 5 years out. I've always used that, like being able to, know exactly. I'm not talking about a vision statement or just the end result, but how all the things that you did that got you to where you want to be 5 years
Wow.
out. So you're almost writing in like past
Yeah.
tense. And what that forces you to do is actually, make sense of all the challenges you have to overcome, all the things you have to do, but you almost, fast forward into that.
This is good stuff. Probably in 5 years, hopefully you still talk to us little guys when you're $1 billion company, but hopefully you still have it in your heart to come
Yeah,
back
the
on the
speed
show.
of AI, who knows how long it'll take. It might take half the time, right?
Who knows? Just don't forget us. Right. So
yeah, that's right.
when you're making, the transition, kind of moving your way into entrepreneurship, can you share if there was anything that scared you the most? Was it financial, reputation, or identity, for example?
So the obvious surface level fear was financial, because I put everything on the line. Like literally, I burned the boats. There was no safety net. There was no salary income. I put all my savings into it. So that was, if it didn't work, I would be completely like finished and I would have to start all over again. So that was the sort of surface level fear. But the real deep fear was that I wouldn't achieve my deep desire to be an entrepreneur.
So reputation.
That was the real fear of my dream not coming true. Losing the money was almost like, okay, so I lost all the money I invested, fine. I knew that I would make it up, eventually. That was, it would be painful, but it's short term.
Yeah.
The deepest fear was not becoming who I believed I was meant to be.
Yeah. And as part of our, when we're younger, between age 7 and 12, we pick up this wanting. It's also the part is that we want others to appreciate us as well, right? If we do take this risk and it doesn't work out, what are others going to think about us?
Yeah.
It's that reputation is part of the protective identity that we form at a young age that actually emotionally it stays with us as an adult, right? And if we,
I have to tell you, I actually did not struggle with that. That's a very common fear that people have. Like, what will people say, right? And even when you're successful, you kind of enjoy that success because people validate your success. So other people's opinions play a huge role.
For me, it was big.
The choices, a lot of for me, it wasn't. And here's what it goes back to. And I would love to share like how impactful that was. For me, it directly came from my mom because, if she cared about what people thought, she wouldn't have made any of the choices that she did. And so that conditioning was very much part of my upbringing.
So she already had that
like
mindset.
She had that, and she had
naturally.
such a absolute, in fact, it almost became a trigger for her. If someone said, don't do this, or like, you'll fail, like it became the trigger for her to go do the exact opposite. Like she did not care what other people thought, said, believed. She was just um, a maverick in that way. So not only seeing her example, but she also taught me that, like, don't ever care what people
Yeah,
say,
no,
be
it was
your
part of
own
her.
person. And
Mm.
so you're talking about 7 to 12, like that's where, like, for me, the conditioning was the exact
Yeah,
opposite of,
good.
like, you know, just basically walk your own
Yeah,
path. And if people are judging you or criticizing you, that's an indication that you're standing out.
yeah.
So I actually started to see, criticism or judgment as proof that I'm not ordinary.
Mm.
So
That's
the
good.
wiring became the exact
Hmm.
opposite. So for me, risk taking and failure then was not an issue.
Mm.
I mean, it does affect everyone, but not in the way that it stopped
Yeah,
me.
it wasn't. It wasn't something that was blocking a
It
surface
wasn't blocking.
level. Yeah,
Yeah.
I get it. So now that you're a risk taker, are you looking to get involved with other startups as well?
I guide and advise a lot of startups and founders. For me, though, I'm a big believer in focus. And so, what that means for me, especially at the early stages of building any business, um, I actually intentionally, like, sort of stop doing anything outside of that to put 1,000% of my attention on what I'm building. And it has to get to it. It's sort of like, when you have an infant, you have to give it all your attention until it gets to the point where it can go play with other kids.
Yeah.
So we're at that stage. Flipwork is an infant right now, so I'm totally focused on it.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Focus is huge.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think entrepreneurship, we're modern day warriors, because it's
Yeah.
the risk we take, and and focus is a key component when it comes to having success in any venture. And I don't know. Before, for me, focus was missing. I was jumping from one thing to another as a shiny object
Hmm.
syndrome, that kind of delayed a lot. Made me very frustrated, angry. It was a messy area, my inner world. I'm just grateful that I was introduced to, creating that proper foundation, because whatever we're talking about here is the source, is what powers a human being to take
Hmm.
action, to take risks, to be that warrior. You require it, right? So
Hmm.
if there's a lot of confusion internally, if there's a lot of doubts internally, it's like always bringing back to your current present moment all the stuff that didn't work out. And if you give that energy, is really, really
Hmm.
difficult to do anything, I found, for me personally. And one.
Yeah, and I've dealt with
Yeah.
that in the past for sure, where and that's why I finally realized how powerful focus
Yeah.
actually is, because focus isn't just what you choose to do. More importantly, focus is what you choose not to do, the things you have to say no to.
Hmm.
And I don't think a decade ago, I was not doing a good job with that.
Yeah.
I felt like I was saying yes to a lot of
Yeah.
things. I had multiple ventures and, programs or initiatives I would pursue. I like kind of, have my hand in a whole bunch of different
Hmm.
things. Anything that interested me, I would just go like do that.
Yeah.
But my attention was then split across so many different things. But deep inside, what I actually discovered, that the reason I was doing it was because I was hedging my bets. Focus also means that you have total belief in what you're doing. And that's why you can say no to everything else. But if you have even a little bit of doubt that, what if this doesn't work out? What if this fails? Well, let me, like, have all these plan B, C, D, E, F. So in case this first thing doesn't work out, I don't look bad and I won't look like a failure and I won't lose my money or reputation or any of that. So let me just spread myself across all of this. And so it looks like I'm doing a whole bunch of things and one didn't work out.
Hmm.
It's a lot easier to say 1 out of 10 things I did not work out versus saying I did one thing and it failed.
Yeah.
And so for me, the discovery was When you're not focused, it's probably coming from doubt in what you're doing or doubt in yourself.
Yeah.
When you totally commit, you've overcome that
Yeah.
doubt and you have total belief
Yeah,
in your path.
and people in the audience, if they're dealing with this and is holding them back, know that the key
Mhm.
ingredient to actually making things better is to create that self belief. We are the
Mhm.
leader in our life to create those shifts that are necessary to shift our situation, but there has to be that level of self-belief. All the successful people I interview on this show, majority of the information, it comes back to the level of self-belief they have. It's like some of these
Mhm.
stories, or in my situation, I'm blessed to hear, because some of these stories, people lost, for example, they built up an empire of say 10 million, and everything
Mhm.
fell apart. They were just they were in debt. They had to pay $200,000, for example,
Yep.
and they had nothing. And now they're at 100 million plus. So it's
Mhm.
all. Many of the mentors will say this, right? That if you have the right mindset, you can lose everything and gain it tenfold back, because you
Yeah.
you are the driver. So I really
Mm.
appreciate what you just shared. Thank
Yeah, I think what you shared about, if you have belief that you can create an outcome once, if you can create the result once, then you can do it over and over again. So temporary setbacks, failures, even total losses don't define your end
you. Yeah.
state. And I've gone through that where I've built up huge multi-million dollar global businesses, and then something happened and almost lost it, like financially it was like in tatters and all of that stuff, but I built it back up again. So like that belief is what drives you when you realize you are not the product of external circumstances. You are the product of your internal belief
Yes.
and the decisions you make on a
And
daily
if you don't
basis.
have it,
As long as that is there, you're
yeah,
unstoppable.
if you don't have it, that's why we're here to talk about this stuff, because if you don't
Yeah.
have it, you can actually create it. That's the beautiful part, that
Right.
the control is. That's the
Yeah.
only control we really have. Outside control is just all an illusion, that we think we can make our
Yeah.
results go in exactly the way we want. It's just fairy tale. But I'm saying, internally is really the only control we have. So if you work on your internal world, man, I tell you, your results will shift
Yeah.
for the better. That is the source of all the results. Can you share
Yeah. And
what?
look, in business, often you um, encounter situations where, someone steals money from you or cheats you or sues you, whatever. You go and run into those kind of situations all the time. It happens, right? But what you have to remember is people can take everything away from you, but they can't take away who you are. And if you believe in yourself and you build yourself and grow every single day, you just keep getting better and better.
Mhm.
And is that's
Yeah,
the
better
gold.
is a good word. So you have stepped into leadership roles during your transformations, or even in crisis, for example, if they did happen in the
Mhm.
past. What did you notice, any specific patterns that, actually consistently hold companies back from real growth in those kind of situations?
Fear. I
Fear.
would say it's um, I work with large enterprises, and I see this so often that it's um, the fear of losing power, the fear of losing control, the fear of losing status.
Control.
Those things play out, and it leads to poor decisions that are protecting the past instead of taking risks to build the
Yeah.
future. And this also could be true for an entrepreneur. So as an entrepreneur, you have to really focus on
Yeah.
that as you experience success, it's almost inevitable that some level of fear of losing what you built starts to play out.
Mm.
we're most risk taking at the start because you got nothing to lose. There's only upside,
Yeah.
right, when you're starting
Yeah.
out. But at some point, you start to see success, you start to see the money, you start to see the results. The danger is at that point, if you then worry about losing it
Yeah.
because you protect what you have, you're not going to be able to make the right decisions about where you need to go.
Mm.
And that is it. That's why it helps to have you know a peer group, or like for me, my peer group of other CEOs was
Environment.
really helpful.
Hmm.
The right environment where other people can hold you accountable and help you see and be a sounding board.
Mm. Yeah, wonderful. So if someone is actually staying in a career that, they internally or secretly uh, actually resent, even being
Hmm.
there, it just feel safe, but they resent it. What do you think that
Hmm.
decision is, that decision will cost them long term if they stay there?
Yeah. Well, isn't that the truth about most people in corporate,
Yeah.
though? Like,
Yeah, I was
is
there,
it's
trust me. Yeah.
one of the phrases I cannot stand is TGIF. If you have to say, "Thank
Oh,
God it's
yeah.
Friday," like,
Every day is
uh,
Friday.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? I mean, I, I can't stand that, because it's like if you are living your life for the weekends, then you got to change your
Yeah.
life. Make your weekdays worth living
Make every
and be
day a
so
weekend.
exciting that you're living on your own
Yeah.
terms. So the idea that you are choosing safety and certainty, even if you're miserable in your job and you resent it every day, you're trading your life for a paycheck, and that makes no sense at all. And here's the thing, though: the safety that people thought they had in their job, with AI and what's going to happen with you know layoffs and the impact
Hmm.
on jobs, that safety is gone.
Yeah.
Because what's worse is if you lose your job and you don't even have a high agency mindset and you don't believe in yourself, now you're really in trouble, because you can't even figure out how to transition from that employee mindset to an entrepreneur mindset.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No, definitely.
the key is ultimately, what if you have a job that you love? Great, that's
Yeah.
awesome. The point is not about employee versus entrepreneur. The point is, make sure you're living in alignment with what you really want, with who you really are, and never trading it because you just want to be
Yeah, and
safe.
Saphir, I had a Saphir, I forgot his last name, but he was a guest on our show. He said something interesting, is that even if you're in a job, you are relying, if you feel safe, but you're still relying on the owner of that business that is living in uncertainty, because you're
Hmm.
still dependent
Yeah.
on him. And picking a route that actually feels fulfilling, going after your dreams, is super important, because as human beings, we're not something small. We might have been told that, but
Hmm.
there's greatness inside us, and when we start
Hmm.
poking and looking in the right place instead of trying to figure it out here, trying to mimic another a person that's successful, or
Hmm.
consuming all the content. I don't mean to stop consuming this content, keep going,
Yeah, yeah,
but
you gotta
but
keep
but
doing
in
that.
general, like, you don't want to be keep consuming content and not taking action. And
Yeah.
when we actually go towards what we want, even if it doesn't feel safe, it just feels so freaking amazing. And again,
Yeah.
we need the right foundation to survive that journey,
Hmm.
because it can be difficult, entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned about like consuming content, and that I see this pattern where people start imagining that they're living a life but not taking action to actually get there. And the point is, you have to make the shift from being a consumer to a creator. You have to build things in order for your dreams to come true. Because if all it took was big dreams, you would have 8 billion entrepreneurs. The reason we don't have that is because it actually takes the vision to build something and the self belief to take action on it. And without that, you're just stuck in this imaginary world where just consuming, content of other people's successes makes you feel that you're doing something about it too. And but until you take that first step, it's not going to happen. Well, in my own business, for me, the biggest difference is for what we have accomplished thus far in Flipwork. It would have taken me a team of 15, 20 people to do the exact same thing that I'm able to do without the same amount of headcount, right? So that is a huge advantage to anyone building a business today, because you can get started with almost no capital, and no, you don't have to hire people to like get going. That reduces the barrier to entry so much for anyone stepping into entrepreneurship. So for me, that's like probably the biggest shift, not just doing things faster and more efficiently, but the amount of like the business building part of it being that feasible without like a whole big team is huge. And then of course, like we work with large companies and their AI transformation, and typically what we see is at least about 40% more capacity getting added just because of AI. So that's a significant, like it's almost like doubling your headcount, right? Without. Thanks for having me.